So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar on HR trends and predictions for 2022. My name is Wendy Liu. I run product marketing at Sense. And for those who aren't familiar, Sense is a leading provider of AI-driven talent engagement and communication solutions for recruiting. So we integrate with your system of record, like your ATS or your CRM, and really bring that personalization to life. And I'm incredibly excited for today's discussion on HR trends and predictions. It is absolutely insane that we are just 17 days away from the year's end. I had to do that calculation just to make sure that it's right. And I think if anything that we've learned from this last year is that the world can really be unpredictable. So I'm really excited, but I am really excited about all the innovation that this has spurred on and just seeing all the changes within the recruiting industry. So I'm excited to have this discussion with our amazing panelists today. And before we jump in, just some quick housekeeping. Today's webinar will be recorded. So we'll go ahead and send the recording to your emails, and you can also find all of our videos on YouTube. And second, I will be doing my best to ask our panelists the spiciest questions I can think of, but also feel free to use the Q&A function to ask their panelists questions as well. So with that, I am very excited to introduce our panelists today. We have William Tincup, President and Editor-at-Large of RecruitingDaily. And then we also have Kelly Robinson. Kelly, if you want to turn your video on, there he is. He is the CEO of RedDot Media. And then we also have Alex Rosen, who is the co-founder and head of product at Sense. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to each of our speakers to give a quick intro about themselves and about their companies, and we'll go from there. William, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I hate introductions. So I will, of course, go first. William Tincup, Virgo, favorite color is turquoise. Obviously, I'm a Manchester United supporter, which I know Kelly will love. Dad, husband, son, just all around halfway decent guy. Got a lot of great, funny, inappropriate stories if you want to go offline. I'm the president and editor-at-large at RecruitingDaily. I've been studying HR and recruiting technology for 22 years, and I advise a lot of startups. So that's me. And I'm just really, really happy to be here. Thank you, Wendy, for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being here. Kelly?
Hey, hi. If I'd have known it was okay to wear our soccer shirts, then I would have obviously reciprocated. I didn't know that. No, I didn't get the memo of that one. So I'm Kelly Robinson. I'm also a huge Tottenham fan, which is, I'm assuming, why William chose to wear that rival shirt. I have spent about 175,000 hours and over $500 million helping companies make recruitment advertising work. Those companies used to be the ones that were getting enough candidates, but they were paying too much and needed to optimize their processes. And nowadays it's a volume issue. They're not getting enough candidates for all their vacancies or their jobs, and they call us and we help them achieve their click market share.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to having the discussion with both of you. Thank you so much for joining. And then we also have Alex.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you to my co-panelists for being on this. I am one of the co-founders and run the product team at Sense. So as Wendy said, we work to help our customers find the right candidates and also to hire them very fast. And we're going to talk a lot about that. I think those are trends that are continuing in critical importance. So really excited for this discussion today. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Well, we don't have a deck today or anything like that, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that, guys, so you can see all of our beautiful faces and jump right in. So before we head into 2022 predictions, I'm curious about your reflection on this past year, which I feel like just went so fast. Did you have any predictions coming into this year, and were they met or did they divert from your expectations? Let's start with Kelly.
I would say I had predictions coming into this year. I think I just had more hopes. It's been a strange world, isn't it? And was hoping it was going to get back to more to normal. I'm a little concerned that we're on the verge of lockdown 3.0, but right now we're in a reasonable place. the job market for me, and particularly the advertising market, which is obviously my area of specialization, has been a complete enigma. It's been crazy this year. We've never seen anything like this before. And let me bring that to life for you. If you track the job volume over the last 20 years, even the last 10 years, on average, you're seeing 2 to 5 million jobs advertised in any given month, roughly an equivalent labor force participation. So the numbers sort of matched up. And, there were peaks and troughs. When I moved here in 2009, we all remember 2009 when, the financial meltdown, that was at the sub 2000 low of jobs. But this year, that number's been obliterated. I mean, that number's at the point now where we're around 11 million jobs advertised, but the participation in the workforce is still lower than it was pre-pandemic. So it's been a really unusual year. And it's one of those years where, when you're planning your HR budgets, when you're planning your strategy, when leadership are looking at forecasting costs for the forthcoming year, particularly from an advertising standpoint, you look at historic data. It's what we all do. It's where we drive our averages for budgets. But those numbers from 2018 through to 2021 are sort of largely irrelevant right now. So for me, it's been a really unusual year, an enigma. And if you're going to say, I think one thing away from this statement is that if you're planning your strategy, if you're planning your advertising budgets, your data from the last few years is somewhat meaningless.
Very interesting. And I think that's incredibly a lot similar to the data that we're seeing in terms of the job participation, the quit rates and things like that. So excited to dive into that deeper later in the conversation as well. Mm-hmm. William?
Yeah, I think, as I look back at the reflections I had at the end of 20 coming into 21, just a year before that, the candidate was faster than the TA team. So the candidate could react faster, would make decisions faster. By the time we fell in love with them, they'd already had 4 offers, accepted a job, etc. And so speed and quality was a real problem. And so I expected the candidate to come back, right? I expected that wave of the candidate kind of resurgence, if you will. We'll just use a football metaphor. It's a counterattack, right? I expected that. It happened a lot faster than I expected. So when I was thinking about it in, about this time last year, I think, okay, the candidate's going to come back. Okay. But it felt like overnight. And Wendy, to your point, 2021 felt like every hour was a day. And in 2020 and 2021, it felt like every day was a week. Like one year, everything was slow as molasses. The next year, this year, like I can't believe it's December. So for me, it's the candidate coming back and the velocity in which they came back with, but also their expectations and desires and needs are vastly different than what they were 2 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. And Alex?
Yeah, so I'll give you one that I think that I got kind of right, and then I got everything else wrong, but I'll give you one that I definitely got wrong. So one that I got right, which I feel good about, and I just see continuing, is really what we do here at Sense. Not a surprise that we choose to kind of put our time into this, but it was really the year to automate. Particularly on TA recruiting teams, we just saw the automation of sort of rote tasks and sort of key workflows and talent acquisition just get more and more popular. And one reason for that is that I just believe that it's a good thing to do and it leads to a good candidate experience. But the other reason is that all these trends that both of my co-panelists have talked about already, it's really hard to find recruiters also. It's a tough job market there to recruit recruiters. So I've seen so many of our customers have to really kind of go after larger, harder, loftier goals than they ever had to grow their teams and companies with a smaller, more difficult, higher turnover workforce than they've ever had. And really the answer there is to automate more, and we'll obviously talk more there. So one thing I feel good about getting right. I think the thing that I got wrong is, I think like a lot of you, I thought, all right, 2020 is over. the lost year is done, and we're going to just bounce back and return to normal kind of. And I really thought there would be a little bit of like a reversion to the mean and some of these, COVID trends around, remote work would, slow down, and, people just going back to their jobs and sort of taking jobs that they can find. And obviously, as everyone here knows, that didn't happen. I think many of these trends accelerated this year. So, that's what I think is going to continue. But we have certainly never going back. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and I think that consistent theme is that yes, last year was just completely unprecedented. Like, I know that that's been such an overly used word, but I feel like it just describes the state so well in terms of just not knowing how the trends are going to perform, how our predictions are going to perform. But I think everybody can agree that it's been a very unique year, and I think that has spurred a lot of innovation and a lot of new tactics and new kind of strategies that you have to implement to kind of beat the market conditions of today. And I think that's going to be a consistent theme that we talk through today's discussion as well. I actually launched a poll at the very beginning of this conversation, but I also wanted to end it and share the results with everyone. This was a quick look at the high-level discussion points of today's conversation. So talking about the continued impact of the pandemic, the candidate experience, automation and AI in recruiting, DE&I, and macro influences. So it looks like the first three are really the core ones that we want to tackle home. So we'll spend a little bit more time on those conversations and those topics.
Excellent.
So yeah, let's jump into it. So having now been in the pandemic for nearly 2 years, do you think that the recruiting industry has really adapted to where it needs to be? What are some of the positive changes that you've seen, and where do you think are still some gaps? Alex, I would love to start with you if possible.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, we've absolutely seen major changes, and really, particularly in digital transformation, with companies that Sense works with. And I think one of the trends of pandemic, which certainly is true in TA, is that it's really kind of pulled forward all these things. I think a lot of companies had on their roadmap, had on their mind as priorities, but were kind of easy to push off before. And so, we at Sense, we talk a lot about sort of the future has been pulled forward now by 10 years. And, all these things that we thought might take a long time, like, video chats is more of the norm, or, chatbots in the recruiting process have really just immediately overnight became a priority for teams. And I think that we're really continuing to see that today, as teams, kind of work to just keep up with all this craziness that we've been talking about. I think that there is always room to, do more. And, these are not things that companies can just do in a day or a year or even 2 years. So, it's not like just if you haven't done these things, not like you're even that far behind. It's now is a good time. And I think many companies who do kind of, go through digital transformation actually are, doing it fast. I think one area that I'm seeing a lot of people think about more, but maybe not having gotten there yet is really measurement. Just really measuring the whole kind of recruitment funnel, where those kind of drop-off points are, where they're finding candidates, where the good candidates coming from, how fast, who, where, and what source. I mean, I think that there's under investment there, and that's something that we're going to see companies do more of soon.
Yeah. So that's from the tech side. William, I know that you work a lot in terms of the pulse on recruiting teams and talent acquisition teams. Love to hear your feedback or your thoughts on that side of the business.
Yeah, real quick, I want to go back to the poll. You don't pull it up, but the AI and automation piece. As we look at that, one of the things what I love about it is we're looking at the low value task. So when we look at that, initially 5 years ago, we would look at that and we get scared. Hiring managers, recruiters, sourcers, et cetera, would look at that. Oh, the robots are going to take my job. And the truth is that you look at a recruiter's day, and it's bifurcated with high value tasks, human related tasks, and then it's this lower value tasks like scheduling, candidate scheduling, and go through a litany of those things. AI, machine learning, et cetera, is taking all of that low value stuff and automating that and helping us have a better candidate experience, better hiring experience, et cetera. So it's actually an appropriate use. And so I like that the audience is kind of seeing that, but I'm also seeing hopefully seeing the positive sides of that. As it relates to the question, I think, the things that I think that, we've adapted to, and some of the things that we will see more of is remote work in job descriptions. It's ZipRecruiter, Indeed, LinkedIn, all note that remote and remote work are the top searched phrases. So if your job description doesn't include that, or your strategy around that, if you have a hybrid work model, communicating that effectively. I was telling an audience this the other day that recruiters that I know are trying to figure out synonyms for the word commute, because like when we would say commute before, it's no big deal. Like you lived outside of New York, you'd have an hour commute into the office. So if you lived in LA, an hour commute in, an hour commute out, no big deal. Now you say the word commute as a recruiter and it's DOA. Like the candidate is just disinterested, and so you gotta, if that's the company's future and they've made that stake in the ground, then you've got to figure out, okay, how do we sell this, and how do we figure out and find people that would like to do a commute, and figure out what's going to be commensurate to make that work for them. The last two things I'd say is it's damn near impossible today to hire great hiring people. So, like we've talked for years about how difficult it is to find data scientists and how to find software engineers, front-end developers, full stack developers, et cetera. Like that's been going on for a long time. But try and find a global head of TA or a global head of sourcing, and it's just as hard.
I'd say it's worse than that.
Yeah. And that's new, at least in my lifetime. That's new, because if you wanted to get a recruiter, you could throw a rock and get a recruiter. Now that's changed. So that's interesting. And we'll probably talk more about that. But then, and the last thing, and it ties back to what I said in the first, is candidates have almost all the power. And I think that's we've got to adapt to that. That even if it's not true, the perception is that they've got all the power, and we've got to figure out how to work with them and collaborate with them to find the right fit and to find the right kind of career path, et cetera. But yeah, there's a lot of things in there to unpack, but I know Kelly's got some other ideas too.
Well, before I'll come back to the question in a second, but this point on recruiters, I think, is particularly interesting, because what I'm hearing, and I'll be keen to see if you're hearing the same, is that if you are trying to hire somebody in talent at the moment, which is impossible, the conversation goes something like this: hi, and they respond how much and where, and depending on the answer, the phone goes down or not. I mean, literally, that's what it, because to be fair, they've not been in that much demand over the years, right? You, like, to your point, you could throw a rock and get them, but now, so if you're going to try and hire talent people, start with this much and there.
Yep. Well, there was a famous billboard in Silicon Valley before it was after .com and before the mortgage crisis, that it was a full stack developer, 385,000. Here's the link. Like that's it. That was the billboard. It was right when you came out of the airport. Brilliant. And that was the ad. Like it was a full billboard, and that was the job. It was, here's the title, here's the pay, here's the link. If you're either that person or you're not. If you're Absolutely. Not that person, that billboard wasn't for you.
I'll give you even one more that we've seen recently. We've heard of recruiters actually sending the offer in the initial outreach of, this is exactly what the offer will be, all the kind of clauses, the pay, the title of, of course they want to talk maybe before the person actually signs on the dotted line, but just completely transparent about,
Yep.
you know, this is, if you think it's good, then let's talk, but I don't want to waste both of our time here.
Yeah, I've seen that with software developers too, where they're outsourcing the first levels of their interviews to other people and letting them kind of deal with some of the mundane things. But I like what you're saying about TA folks, because they know the game,
Yeah, of course.
right? So they're gonna basically say, yeah, okay, at one point you're gonna get me to this place. Great, fantastic. Let's just get there faster.
Yeah.
And then just put the demands, because it is, let's call it what it is. It's a list of demands. And again, you either want the talent or you don't. If you don't want the talent, okay, don't play. If you do want the talent, you're gonna have to figure out a way to play, and you're gonna have to figure out a way to adapt and also thrive.
Exactly. So your question was about the
Pandemic.
the pandemic, and has the recruitment industry changed?
Yeah.
So I guess bring us back on track. So slightly different opinion. I think the recruiting industry, so by that I mean the staffing and the agency side of the business, has adapted and has done so very quickly. I don't see anywhere near as much of that from direct employers. Now, I might get stoned for this, but I genuinely don't see that. You know, if you think about what's happened, right? We've seen the largest stimulus ever. We've had this quote unquote great resignation. What was it? 4.4 million people in August, 4.3 million in September. 3% of the workforce just up and quit. And we, recently come out and said they're not coming back. So they're gone. Throwing 5 million new jobs into the mix. You start seeing things like, and these are facts, a bonus for a commercial driver, $20,000. Bonuses for nurses. I saw last week in Florida, $50,000. Perks like free DoorDash for a year. I want free DoorDash for a year, by the way. That's a really good perk.
Yeah, me too.
And I'll be honest with you, it won't be long before we see things like paternity, where you get 2 weeks off for a new puppy. You know that's coming, because we've got to come up with new things. So take all of those massive events. Everything's changed. Yet for me, companies are still trying to optimize their standard apply processes that existed pre-pandemic. And for me, that's like optimizing bows and arrows in the world of gunpowder. It's just not going to work.
It's
What do you
stacking
think-
the chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think is driving the difference between staffing agencies just adapting quickly and corporate enterprises or companies, large scale companies not kind of adapting at the same?
It's their business, and they have to be good at it, because if they don't convert, they don't make money. And so they have no choice. And I think as a direct employee, you've already had the luxury of saying, it works, we can spend a little bit more money, but you can spend money now and you might get your share of the available talent. But if somebody else wants to come in the market, spend more money, you don't see them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not sure people have, and I've got some stats that I'll share with you later on, but I'm just not sure companies have really sat down and said, what do we need to change? We've talked about the candidate experience for years. We've said, when are we going to update these ATS supply forms? When are we going to make it more interactive, easier to do? And now they need to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, like that perfectly segues into the next topic, which is talking about the candidate experience, which I think is a consistent theme that we're talking about, like when it comes to just how the pandemic has forced us to reevaluate and reassess how we do our processes. So Kelly, if you want to continue on your kind of thread of thought here, what is going to be different about the candidate experience in 2022? William said, earlier that the candidates are in charge. They have almost all the power, if not all of it. That is the perception, whether it's true or not. But how is that going to change? Like, are we going to see a fluctuation in that, or is it going to remain the same?
Well, I'd certainly like to see a change, and I think most of us in the industry say that. There's not the evidence that this happened in the past. But I was looking at a stat from, or a survey actually, it was published recently by friends over at JobVite. And in that report, the recruiters said that improving the quality of their hire is the key thing for the next 12 months. And what I found particularly interesting is there was a couple of areas that they said we're going to, downward shift, which is less focus on talent pipelining, less focus on employer branding, which has been, a key topic of conversation for years. But the biggest upward shifts is investing in recruitment technology to automate processes. So to Alex, your point, this seems to be crucial to what people are talking about. And I think, essential when you're swamped with vacancies, or not vacancies, jobs. Sorry, that's the English side of me coming out. But when you're swamped with jobs, you need to automate some of those things that are just taking your time. Now, for me, that goes hand in hand that this year, more money's been poured into HR tech than ever before, $3.6 billion in 2021. And that's gone into things like investing in automation to improve efficiency and ultimately give recruiters more time with candidates. And I think, bearing out what William said earlier on and what Alex said, if we can take away 50% of the job, which is, I don't know, quote unquote admin, and give people more time to do what humans best at, relationship building and talking to people, that will make a significant change for me.
Yeah, I'll try to also sort of tie some of that to sort of what we think about at Sense. And I think it's like the way that I sum it up is, I think candidates have been and are continuing to demand more of a consumer level of experience in their applied processes. And look, I mean, we were all online before pandemic, but now we're just extremely online, right? I mean, all of us on this call are sitting in our homes or our podcast corners, and I mean, it's just like everything is getting done online. Again, that's not new, but I just think that actually a lot of software and a lot of industries have gotten really good. I mean, other tech companies got really good at this. And when you're dealing with a customer support experience, or a like ordered a package and want to know where that package is, actually the tools are getting pretty good there, and you have that same expectation when you apply to a job. And I just think that companies who are trying to hire really need to get good at that and sort of allow a candidate to engage on their own terms, right? They want to grab time on a recruiter's calendar on their phone, right? When they're in the car picking their kid up, right? Because all of our lives have gotten really jumbled up now. And I just think that if, we're just going to see that kind of continue to pull on that thread. And, again, to just say it one more time, like, I just think that like automating all the parts that can be boiled down into that kind of thing, whether that's calendaring or a chatbot about the basic pre-screen, doing that really fast on the candidate's own time. So when you get a recruiter on the phone or video chat with a candidate, think about just like, how are you going to use that time amazingly well to tell the story of your company and that job and why the candidate should care. And the only way to do that is to get a lot of the other things out of the way. So again, I think we're in the third or fourth inning here to change our sports metaphors, and there's a long way to go, but companies are really beginning to realize that they need to focus on this.
And I think one thing that's interesting along those lines are that personalization does not mean fluff. It does not mean like hand holding. It does not mean, just, adding in a little flair here and there. It's really about putting yourself in the shoes of the candidate and understanding what are their needs, their wants, their motivations. Like when we come back down to that salary conversation, like that's something that they want to know right away. That's something that's going to make or break a deal for them. So why not prioritize like what's important to them? And I think that a lot of people are moving away from this idea of personalization as just like a nice marketing touch. And it's more of like an active participation in having that conversation with your candidates and having a more genuine conversation with them as well. William, any additional thoughts on the candidate experience?
Of course, they've taken all the good stuff. So I'm left with very little. I think seriousness. I think speed and quality. I know. Kelly talked a little bit about quality of hire, but we've got to get faster and respond faster and respond in quality ways. So we have to understand what quality looks like. So when 1,000 people apply to our job, then we've got to figure out of that 1,000, where's the quality, and then we've got to be able to respond in seconds and minutes rather than hours, days, and months. And so we've got to change our aperture and the way that we look at speed and the way that we look at response time more, more like other industries, quite frankly. So I think speed and quality, there's obviously a relationship between the two. But I think looking at candidates through the lens of how can we get faster, looking at every part of our process, every technology that we integrate and implement, how can this make us get faster and get to quality? So that's one. Two, I think comp just has to be clearer. I think it's just so important to candidates right now that there's a fairness in comp. So this idea that we've historically looked at with comp, where it's the budget's 250 for this job, but if a candidate comes in at 210, that's like a $40,000 win. And we've historically looked at that as a $40,000 win. Well, what that actually is a $40,000 in equity that we've created. If it's a $250,000 job, and that's what people with that experience and that skill and that potentiality get paid in our firm, then that's what the job is. So it's rewiring recruiters and hiring managers not to look at those budgets as a way to win, but as a way to actually do equitable things with comp. So putting comp, not a range, but putting comp, what is the comp for that particular skill, expertise, experience, degree, certification, and potentiality? What is that? And putting a number next to it and communicating that in the job description. And so I think having that level of clarity and be able to communicate that level of clarity instead of waiting at one point to then drop comp on the person, I think we got to get to comp faster. So I think that, and then the last thing, I think work wherever. Again, I think for knowledge workers, which is most of what we're talking about, if you're a knowledge worker, the idea that you have to be in a box is just, we've blown that, we've smashed that apart. And it's taken us 2 years to kind of reformat people's brains, but like this idea that you have to go to the box to be productive, that's silly. And so I think this work from wherever, I think this, again, if you want the candidates, again, if you want the candidates, you're going to pay them. You're going to be clear about that. You're going to be clear about social justice. You're going to be clear about diversity and inclusion. You're going to be clear about all of these things, and you're going to be clear about remote. And again, if you want to travel to the office, like you just want a respite and you want to go to the office in LA, fantastic. We'd love to have you. There is an office there. And, we have chairs and tables and rooms and all that other stuff. Like, if you want to come, we'd love to have you. But if you don't ever want to set foot in the office, great. Fantastic. Like, why do we care? So,
sorry, Alex.
No. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. Especially with knowledge workers, you want the knowledge, you want the outputs of what they do. And that's what you're paying for. Where they do them, why have we ever cared? But why do we care in a post-pandemic world? Why would we ever care?
Yeah. William, I wanted to follow up on one thing that you said there and ask you, sort of on the comp question, which I agree is key, and it's a really good way just to make sure everyone's on the same page. I mean, how do you think about, like, I've definitely gotten the comment from some people that I work with, customers, or a sense of just like comp is changing so fast now, whether, because of the lack of candidates, or maybe there's inflation going on, of, almost like a lack of just like confidence of what the comp actually is for like any job, and almost a fear that you'll get it wrong.
Oh, you're absolutely
like, how do you counsel people to get past
that? Comp is perception, and perception is the individual. So looking at all the comp data in the world will give you an idea of where we were. It's a historical data point. So whether or not it's salary.com or PayScale, or you get comp out of the BLS, wherever you can get them out of 12 different sources, and then aggregate them, and then that gives you an idea of where we were 2 years ago. But ultimately, it's where the candidate is right now. So what it creates is it creates what's called compression for comp professionals, is that new developer that full stack developer that you're hiring, they believe they're worth 320. Well, the other full stack developers that have the exact same experience in your firm, same skill, same experience, same potentiality, graded out, and they have the exact same. They're all being paid 250. If you bring in the person at 320 and you need them and you want them and you like them and you're going to pay them 320, now you've got to go level up the other folks that were making 250. So it's a perception game. You asked a question, how did they not get it wrong? Shit. How are they ever going to get it right is probably a more appropriate question of the next few years. It's all in the perception of the candidate. They are what they think they're worth. And that's just the way that is. And I think starting with that, like, hey, we recognize that, you know what, you're talented. You got great skills. You've got a great resume. We want you. What are you worth? What do you feel like you're worth?
Yeah.
And if you're willing to pay it, and then you're willing to level set the folks that are internal to your organization, because it's twofold. You got to do both. You can't just pay that person and then hope these other folks don't find out. That's not a winning strategy. You're going to have to, if you decide to pay that person, you're going to have to go back and pay the other folks and level everyone up.
And I think you could add one more to that. And it's, I saw you speak a couple of weeks ago, and it's a point that really resonated with me. And so far, everybody I've discussed it with, it's resonated with them. And it's the way you construct the offer letter. And, you know, you made a presentation around that. Could you give us a 30-second high level view on that, if you don't mind? Because I think it's really valuable for this conversation.
No, and there's a video, so we can share the video, but it was a
Even
bit
better.
Basically when I was asked to do this conference, it was 100 years ago, and I said I want to do something around sales tactics and teach recruiters and sourcers sales tactics. And so Craig, the organizer of the event, said, yeah, fantastic, do whatever you want. All right, cool. So I did it on the title of it was Turns Out Rejection Sucks. And what I did was basically bifurcate the universe of no's, which is on one side, it's how do you map out all the no's the way a candidate can say no to you? And then how do you then map that back to a yes, maybe to the yes? The other one, the one you're talking about, was the path forward, where great salespeople, when they build a proposal for you, they sit on your side of the desk and they build the proposal with you. And we've all been around salespeople that are like this, that there's no surprises. There's no surprises in their game. There's no surprises in any pricing. There's no surprises in like features that you're gonna get. There's not a term, none of that stuff. They build it with you. So they sit with you and they go, okay, now you've said that you'd like to do a 1-year contract, but you also want this pricing. If we do a 3-year pricing, I can get you better than prices, but it's up to you, totally up to you. Now that's how great salespeople operate. They build the proposal with their prospects. Recruiters going forward, I think the smartest and best recruiters will build offer letters in much the same way with candidates, where they sit with a candidate in a Google Doc and literally go, okay, you've told me that learning Python is really important to you. Okay, so I need to put that in the offer letter. So putting you on a career path and a learning path for Python development. Okay, great. What else have we said? You want a $20,000 signing bonus, and okay, fantastic. Let's put that in the offer letter. Like literally building the offer letter with them rather than for them. And the whole bit, Kelly, was to get yourself on the same side as the candidate. And so you're not coming down, I think I used Moses as a reference point. You're not coming down with the tablets and then rendering an offer letter. You're building the offer letter with them so that there's no shock, there's no awe, and there's no surprises. They literally have seen the document that you're about to send to them through DocuSign or HelloSign or PDF, Adobe or whatever it's going to be. They had their hands in the mud, exactly, and they helped you build it. And I think again, I think candidates want that. They desire that.
And also recruiters do, right? It was #1 on the job fight survey, improve the quality of hire, and that's part of that. So, sorry, Wendy, I know I've taken us down sidetrack. We get talking. Sorry.
No, I love this discussion. And I think that in terms of just the quality of hire, I think it also reflects like the quality of the process behind it. It's not just about reflecting on what the candidates are doing, but also like what are you doing internally to promote that type of quality of hire? And I think that's a really interesting, tidbit that I'm receiving and just digesting from this conversation. So really appreciate all the thoughts around this.
I like that, Wendy, and also kind of tweaking that as you go forward. Like that quality of hire has a lifespan, right? And so as you learn more about them through the organization and the good work that they do, how do you then mimic that both in your, I like the way you put that, here's your quality process, here's your quality technology stack, here's your quality team. Now everything's about quality.
Yeah.
And so everything, it's not just about getting quality candidates, yes, but it's about, you've got to apply quality and quality standards across everything.
Yeah. And I think that comes up in reskilling as well, like making sure that your own teams are getting and adapting to like the new kind of talent needs of the industry and the market. So I think it all kind of comes full circle. It comes and attacks everything from top of funnel through like retention as well. I did get some really amazing questions from our audience, so I wanted to prop them up here as well. The first question here is from Jessica. What effect do you think the current impossible recruitment market will have on things like OFCCP and government relations? How does an employer make sure they are both compliant, all while simplifying the process? Any takers?
I mean, I'll go.
That sounds like a Josh Akers question. I'm going to go ahead and suggest that that's a Josh Akers question.
It is a Jessica Smith question.
But let's get him to answer it. Let's make him live.
Call him up.
Because he'll be able to answer the question that you just put in front
he's
of
on
us.
the
Josh,
chat.
I see you in chat.
He's on the chat and he's actually answering it. He's ready to go.
Well, maybe we'll give a second for Josh to answer, and we'll skip over to Josh's question, actually. How do we adjust candidates being oversold, meaning the job day-to-day diverges from what they are quote unquote sold?
Well, stop. Just refuse. It's almost like you have to become the candidate advocate. As a recruiter, you're not the company advocate. You're not the job advocate. You're not the hiring manager advocate. You're the candidate advocate. And you want to have just like great salespeople, you want to have a relationship with that candidate for the rest of your life. So you don't lie to them. And you don't stretch the truth. When they ask you a tough question like, hey, this looks like a really tough job. Yeah, it is. Like, you don't hide anything from them. Like, hey, I didn't see a whole lot of African-American folks when I went through the hiring process. Like, what's up? Well, we don't have a whole lot of fucking African-American people that work here. Like, help us with that. Like, be honest, even when it hurts, and it should hurt, because you should welcome those questions of candidates that really push you. Because if they don't ask, they're not that interested. If they ask you softball questions, they're kind of interested. But if they're asking you tough questions, they're really asking you because they care. So I think the first, your default position is be honest, and then the second position is be honest. That's it.
Yeah. It's a really important question and point, and I love that. And then I would just add, it is, at the end of the day, it is all about incentives and measurement, right? And you need to be careful, actually, because I think in this hiring environment, a lot of companies are moving to just get people in the chair or on the factory floor as fast as possible. And there are times where that is the right thing to do, but you risk more turnover. And I actually think that, to William's point, we need to begin to actually reframe how we measure recruiting more and more to, hey, well, what happened to that candidate down the line? Are they here after a year, after 2 years? Are they a high performer? And what can we learn, right? So not just did you get someone to sign on the dotted line? There are times where that's important, of course, but what happened after?
Yeah, again, coming down to like that quality of hire is not just like that first 10 days or 1 day or whatever it is. It's really thinking through like, how do we make sure that this person is successful? I think that's a really important kind of metric to think through. And I think that when we talk about like the quality and we talk about the process, I think one thing that is really interesting is just the onboarding pain. And Terrence actually asked this question in 2 different locations. So I think he's burning to ask this question. Any talk of mitigating the pain of the onboarding process for new hires in an effort to improve the new hire experience?
I'll start with a couple simple things. And first of all, it's a great question, especially in a remote environment, is you want to dazzle. And so the goal is you want them to have a wonderful experience. You want it to be memorable. And so there's things in an onboarding process that are kind of compliance related, the employee handbook and, a bunch of policy stuff and your benefits and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do that's pre-boarding. So after the offer letter has been signed, it's like, hey, let's get some of this administrivia and minutia. Let's get some of this boring stuff. Let's get this taken care of, and let's make sure that you have a good experience with that stuff. And then let's do some fun things. Let's actually bring you into a happy hour. Let's send you, a box of swag. Again, that's basic stuff, but it's like, how do you dazzle someone that's joining your firm? Because you've recruited them, which means that you've been through the romance phase. You've gotten engaged. Now you're about to get married. Okay. Then what? Like the romance dies? Like that's it? There's no more? That's just dumb. That's a pathway to divorce. So the same is true in a relationship with a candidate and employee. You've got to continue to woo them. You've got to continue to care enough to create something memorable for them and with them. And where you're not kind of reaching the goal with them, get feedback from them. Like, hey, how was the experience? We sent you, X, Y, and Z. We know that you're really into wine. We sent you this wine of the month club deal. How's it been so far? Like, how's been that experience? Yeah, hated it. It was horrible. It was all, basement wine. It's like, oh, okay, well, you know what? Let's get you a better subscription. Like, that's great feedback. You can actually do something with that and create a better experience. Even if it's a bad experience, you can create a better experience. So
Yeah.
I think I'll stop there because I know that the other folks have some other things.
I'll give you 2 tips, very fast. One is, how do you make the candidate feel part of the company before their first day, right? Make them feel invested and part of the team. And I think a lot of those tips there are actually really, really good ways. But like even down to, if this is allowed in your company policy and this kind of job, can you send them their laptop like well before the job begins? Of course, they have to send it back if they don't join, but just these little psychological tricks to make them feel invested and part of it, so they want to do the kind of harder parts of the onboarding process, there are things that you just have to do that aren't that fun, right? Paperwork, and I don't have any way not to do those. 2, the most boring basic tip ever: reminders. That's actually what we coach our Sense customers on a lot, and it's like really basic, but it works. Just never assume they know what they're supposed to do next. Don't even assume, if you're hiring for a light industrial blue collar job, don't assume they know that their first day is tomorrow and they know where to go, even because they might have a couple offers out there, right? Just remind.
And I've 2 really quick points. I know we need to move on. So for me, a recruiter or talent acquisition, focus of their role is to convince somebody to quit their job and come work for your organization, right? And the problem with onboarding is it's got no champion, it's got no protector, and it's certainly no one's priority. So automate everything you can and put the person back in there to say, part of an extension of your role is not just to convince somebody to quit their job, work for your company, but it's to actually onboard and stay with your company. And if we can take the paperwork off the plate, people will do that.
And just one last tip from a marketing person: channel really matters. If you text them, it's going to be a very different experience than from an email. And people need like that different type of just multi-channel engagement. Like if you have something urgent, text them. Like they expect text.
So Wendy, the only thing I'd modify there, first of all, I'm glad you brought it up, is find out how they like communication.
Correct. Yes.
So one of the things is we shouldn't treat everybody like cookie cutters, right? So if they like text, like even ask them, like, hey, how do you like your communication? We've been going back and forth right now on the phone and doing things through Zoom. Like, I didn't even stop to ask you, do you even like Zoom? Like, well, we don't have to use Zoom if you don't want to. We can use something else. You want to use FaceTime? You want to use something else? if I have something really important to get in front of you, how should I do that? So now it becomes a game of each candidate says, man, I love text. Like seriously, I can get a text at 1 in the morning and I can respond to it. That's easy. So okay, that's easy. Once you know that, then you can play that game. But I think caring enough to ask and getting consent, and then following up and following through with it.
And also remembering those preferences, because the worst is when you have a preference, you've
100%.
been asked the preference, you've answered the preference, and then they still ignore your preference.
Yeah, that's not creating a memorable experience in the right way.
Exactly. I would love to move on to the next topic here. I love all the great questions, and I have a couple more that we got from the audience as well, but would love to weave in a little bit more about talking about AI and automation in recruiting. We talked a lot about automated workflows. We talked about job matching and kind of that preference-based matching. When we think about things that are coming into like 2022 and like the given market conditions, what are some of the roles of automation and AI will play in this next year? And what are maybe some potential underrated technologies, and what are some of the very overrated ones? I told you I was going to ask spicy questions. This is my spice. Alex, do you want to start? Actually?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'll kind of talk like a bit about sort of the trends we see here and what AI can do. So one is like, I think when you are bringing on AI technology, it's first just what is the kind of the problem that you're trying to solve, and it can't be too broad of a problem. Today AI does well with, I think, really particular points in the process. Are we trying to match a person to a universe of jobs? Are we trying to have a conversation with them? And I think kind of stepping back into what we've all been talking about today on sort of how do I want to create that consumer experience, and where are things getting slowed down, and can I bring these tools in there? So I think a big trend I'm seeing now, and I think it's going to continue into next year, is sort of using different kinds of the AI tools together, right? So not just like over reliance on one AI model or point solution is what leads to this bias, right? And so, I saw someone ask in the chat here, how do we prevent AI job matching from jettisoning good candidates, right? And I think it's reliance on just one. So always think about what your checks and balances are. So, in a sense, we do sort of job matching and chatbot screening together. So the job matching can do that match. Will it occasionally be biased? Yes, but then the chatbot screening can follow up and ask you, hey, it seems like you're not, that you don't have this scale. I just want to confirm that, right? And really give the candidate the chance to put their best foot forward, right? So I would really think about sort of how you match these tools and make sure that they have those checks and balances. And I will pass it off to my co-panelists to talk about how everything that Sense does is underrated and everything our competitors does is overrated.
I mean, I think from an AI standpoint, there's obviously this fear of it's going to take away my job. My job's going to go. And I think we've probably covered a lot about the way it's going to perhaps remove friction from certain processes and make your life easier. One of the best examples I've seen of it changing jobs, and this is kind of light touch AI, but one of the best ways I've seen it's change jobs rather than remove them is if you go to the store, if you go to the supermarket and you go to self-checkout, and we've all done it, right? You check something out, you put your bag down, the weight's wrong, the light starts flashing, and that person comes over and helps you out. And for me, that's almost symptomatic of AI. It's changed the job. That person used to sit there on a counter scanning your items and putting them in a bag. Now they're there and they become more of a customer services person. They're there to solve your problems. So I think AI is going to release us to do the things that humans we are the best at, which is troubleshooting, relating to people, being answer questions, and technology is not going to do that. For me, I don't think it's going to be a big bang next year. AI, everything changes. I think it's in everything we do anyway. I mean, if you think about it now, most of us see, let's start with the common one, right? We've all had those LinkedIn messages that say, congratulations on your work anniversary. And every single one of us uses the automated response because and you see the same message every year for several years, backwards and forwards between us. It's in Gmail. They write messages for you. We use it much more often. Our developers are using something at GitHub called Copilot, which sort of forward writes certain code for you. We use Siri to add tasks and, turn lights on with Alexa and Google. So I think it's around us everywhere. And I think it's just going to gradually permutate more into our business practices. And I know we're short on time, so I'm giving William a little bit of time to finish up.
I'm good.
I'm getting the finish up look.
No. Everything's been said that needed to be said. We're good.
Okay.
Well, we have a couple minutes left in the webinar here, the discussion here. I do want to get to one other question that was listed out in the chat, which is, any predictions for 2022 in the gig economy recruiting world? Is it the same as the kind of full-time salaried W-2 world environment?
I think if you want the talent, you'll do whatever it takes to get the talent, or you're going to cry yourself to sleep. So whether or not that's gig, freelance, nearshore, offshore, full-time, seasonal, remote, hybrid, you can call whatever you want. You are an accumulation of skills, experience, and potentiality. How you bring that to market is your business. But ultimately, if you want that talent, you're going to have to figure out how to meet them where they are and pay them what they commiserate with what they believe they're worth, or you're just not going to get them. And you're going to have to live in a world where you can't get talent, which good luck with that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it is expansion of the definition of what we mean by gig work to all those categories that William said. And I think companies that don't even think of themselves traditionally as gigs sort of becoming more comfortable with, kind of for fractional work is another term that we use here, and sort of actually like helping candidates put that kind of job lifestyle together, rather than in the past saying, no, I just want you here, or
It's a good point,
you're on my gig platform. I want you to do 10 hours a day on my gig platform. But actually becoming more comfortable, sort of, how do we make my platform or my job work well and what you're doing outside of here?
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, we are right about time here. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank all three of you for such an incredible conversation. I had so many questions because I thought we had to fill the time, and you guys just had such incredible insights across your different perspectives. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all three of you for all your time and your insights and sharing them with the audience.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.
It was fun.
Thanks,
Awesome. Well,
everybody.
we're going to have to do this again because I loved this conversation.
Yeah, well, hey, let's do it next week. I'm sure we can. There's a bunch of questions
more to
we can
do.
get to.
I mean, William, I'll just throw time on your calendar. We'll stream it live and we'll get it done.
It's easy.
Awesome. Well,
thank you. Seriously, Wendy, thank you for putting this together. Also, Kelly, Alex, thank you all for being so smart. This is wonderful.
Thank you so much. Well, with that, we will go ahead and conclude today's discussion, and thank everybody for joining. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate it. Bye.
Peace.
Bye.